to chat with you again. This is a different thing. We've been talking to you about, David's been doing his series on how to heal the wound. And I've been talking to you also. We're doing a series on worship and the different ways that worship is approached and how we can practice worship in our life. One of the things that we wanted to do, though, was we also wanted to do kind of a book study. So in the men's huddle group that I lead, we've been going through this book, The Green Letters by Stanford. So we're going to do maybe one or two of these sessions per week, and I would encourage you to get the book and read it along with us if you would so desire. It's short. It's a total of maybe 90 pages, and the chapters are 2 or 3 pages long, so it shouldn't take you long to get through. And we'll just try and do like a chapter a session. So that's the introduction. That's the book, Stanford, The Green Letters, Principles of Spiritual Growth. And the first chapter is on faith.
So, Nate, I've had friends, and I'm sure you've had friends, and I'm sure people who've watched have friends who say that they just don't have faith, or that they struggle with faith. Can you share what that means, or just what the book talks about when it comes to faith?
So that's a great question, and at times I have felt like I don't have faith. But I think as we ask that question, there's a part of reality that we're totally missing out on, and that reality is this, is that everybody has faith. Everybody has faith. Life is sustained by faith. So faith is a reality of the human existence. There's an old Chinese proverb that says, "He who fully deliberates before taking a step spends all of life on one foot." And the idea is, man, you can't fully know anything. And if you tried, you would never do anything. It would be paralysis. That would be the extent of life. And so we can't fully know, and so we operate every day on 100 million decisions based on faith rather than fact.
So Nate, what's this?
So this is my leprechaun trap. We caught him, and it was fun, but he came out through the hole right there. Now this is actually my little faith illustration. And just to get to that idea of life being sustained by faith, everybody is a believer when it comes to that idea. Everybody is. So what we have here, this is a little bit of our coffee nook ingenuity. So we have a basket with creamers in it. Leprechauns love cream, apparently. Or at least they do in the Ross Draver Coffee Nook. And it's supported by some coffee straws that are stuck into a piece of cardboard. But the idea is this, is that we make these assumptions about life, and they are the things that uphold the life that we live. They uphold our reality. So we assume things. So a great assumption that we make, not based on fact, but on faith, is that school will be in session from about September through May. We think that's true, right?
Right.
We have always thought that's true. I have heard accounts of that. Not the last time this maybe wasn't true was like 100 years ago, where this is just what happens, and we took that as a given. But man, I don't think that should be a given anymore, right?
Right.
That's one of these things that just we have to take that out, because that's not true. Another thing that we've taken for granted is that we'll all have jobs. I know many of you don't have jobs right now. It just you took it for granted that you did your work, you worked hard, you showed up on time, you did what you were supposed to do, and you'd still have a job. Well, man, this has eradicated that. And so there's a piece of our faith that, man, we were believing something, and it was an assumption that wasn't based in reality. It was a decision, an assumption based on faith, and faith alone. For those of us who are in Allegheny County, we assumed that we'd be able to have our freedom, and that's probably the core tenet of our country is freedom. And now we've been given the stay-at-home thing. David, you live in Allegheny County, and for you it's been a real question: do you come in or not? Now the government has said that churches are an essential thing, so David, you're here, and I appreciate that. But for many people, man, we're staying home because we've been told you can't travel. Don't leave your house. That's another one of these things of faith that we've lost. And so life looks like that, where we make a bunch of assumptions, and then suddenly at times we find they're not true, and these things start to fall. And when they do, life collapses. So here's the point. What's most important? If we're all believers, what's the big question? David, what do you think is the big question?
I think the question is, what is your faith in? Am I right?
Yeah, he's very right.
See?
He's in seminary.
Yeah.
So, yeah, absolutely. It's what is our faith in? And so, obviously, man, these things here, we took these things as for granted. And, man, childcare and work and all that stuff's been so interrupted because we took all this stuff for granted. We expected it to be true. So then the question is, well, what is really true? What can we take for just depending on? And that's the Word of God. That is the sole objective source of truth in all of human history. And we cling to that. And we cling to that in times like this. So a little bit of history on that. That's the fundamental question that philosophers have been debating since the pre-Socratic. So we're talking thousands of years. The most brilliant minds in humanity have tried to answer pretty much that singular question. What is true? How do we know what's true? The second one is, how do we know what's good? But how do we know what's true? And by God's grace, we have the Word of God, and we know that's true. It has not changed one bit in the coronavirus. Not one bit has been altered. So, first chapter here is on faith. I want to make sure I stay in my time limit here with you guys. And it says in Hebrews 11:1, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. You're sitting in the basket on top of the straws. You don't see what's underneath you, right? But if you are building your basket that you're standing on the Word of God, man, there is truth here. There's solid things, much more solid than stir straws. So, David, tell me something. What are some of the statements in the Bible that are incredibly comforting, that you believe, that you have faith in a time like this?
So I think of Philippians 4 when Paul calls us to worship or rejoice in the Lord always, and whether it's in all circumstances bring our things to Him, and that the peace of God will surpass all understanding. So to me, that's comforting to know that even though I don't know everything or what's going to happen the next day or the next week or the next month, I can be comforted to know that God's peace will come to me, and you can do a lot with that.
For me, one of the things I've been thinking about is that God never leaves us, and we're never forsaken. And when Jesus talks about how He knows when a sparrow dies, and even the hairs on my head, as fleeting as they are numbered.
Yeah.
That He knows that. Isn't that so funny? I don't know why He thinks that's so funny. There's a statement in here on this subject. It's on page 11. James McConkie wrote, faith is dependence upon God, and this God dependence only begins when self-dependence ends. And self-dependence only comes to its end with some of us when sorrow, suffering, affliction, broken plans, and hopes bring us to that place of self-helplessness and defeat. Man, I think for many of us, we're entering into that realm as so much of our self-dependence, things that we thought were true and given, that we really didn't need God's help to sustain, have gone. And now is a time when we begin to depend on God in some really beautiful and profound ways. So that's our encouragement to you as we look at chapter 1 of the Green Letters by Miles Stanford is, what are you believing? And this is a stunning time for us as a country when we see, man, so much of what we believe we took for granted as true and as factual, and it has showed up as not and as a variable. But the Word of God and God Himself is immovable, and we can count on Him.
Yeah. Again, that's the Green Letters by who? Miles Stanford. I encourage you to go buy it to follow along with us. Thanks, Nate.
All right. See you guys next time.